Here is another exploration video of Leviathans from Catalyst Game Labs, brought to you by the Casting Shadows blog. This exploration will look at some of the basics, and we'll use the introductory scenario that you find in the Lieutenant's Manual as its basis. So as you see, we have the suggested map, which we have mirrored here. Now, if you're using the beta rules, the Lieutenant's Manual that you can get online, you might not have the official Leviathans dice, but don't worry about it because you can use standard polyhedrals to match them. D4 goes to D green, D6 to D blue, D8 to D yellow, D red is a D10, and D black is a D12. Okay. Also, if you don't have enough dice, if you're doing some really large battles, that can help you out as well. Alright, so once the board is set, we put the ships in the deployment zone, right? Which is basically a band of 4 hexes on each end of the map. Okay. We have the ships placed so that no part of them is in a half hex. Right. According to the standard rules of play, if ships finish their movement and the turn with any part of the vessel in a half hex, it's counted as destroyed and it's to be removed from play. We used to argue about this all the time in Battletech. Why don't we just put down another sheet? Well, we've got 2 maps. We're going to stay on the 2 maps. Fair enough? Okay. To start, both sides roll initiative using 2D red. The English ships in this scenario are the HML Hertfordshire, or Hertfordshire, and the HML Raven. For the French, the Pontbriand and the Pelletier. So the opposing players roll off on 2D red, and the highest initiative score wins for that turn. So for the English, we would have a 6, and for the French, we would have a 7, meaning the French have the initiative. Now, initiative in Leviathans may work a little differently than you've experienced in other games, in that ship size plays a factor. The larger ships move the slowest, and so therefore they are moved first. The smaller ships move fastest, or best, and they're moved last. But even if you've won initiative, you may still find yourself moving your ships first, based on ship size. Now in this case, the scenario is evenly balanced. Each side has one of the 2 classes of ships that are involved. There's a Type 2 and a Type 1 on each side, right? A Type 2 and a Type 1. So the English with a 6 have lost initiative, which means their largest ship has to move first. Then the French will move their largest ship, and then back to the English for the smaller ship, and back to the French for the smaller ship. So for the English, the large ship is a Type 2, a light cruiser. And it has a starting movement point rating of 6. And it must enter 2 hexes before making a turn. So just to keep things simple, we might do this. 1, 2, 3, 4. Pivot on the second. 5, 6. We might do that. On the French side, we have, as a large ship, the Pontbriand, also a light cruiser, which has a starting movement point of 12, but also the 2 hex limit for movement. So, for turning, let's see what we might do. We might do 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10. That was 11 and 12. All right. Then we'd go back to the English. The Raven, a destroyer, has a starting movement point of 9 and a turn radius of 1. Not really a turn radius, but you know what I mean. So we might do something like 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9. For some potential disaster. Excellent. And then on the other side, we might take a look at the Pelletier, which has again a 12 and a 1. So we might do something like 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10, 11, 12. Something like that. Okay. Now this isn't about the tactics. If you want to leave comments, great. Just showing movement. Okay. So if you missed the earlier explanation, or just for a review, how were turns conducted? Turns are around a particular hex on the base. So the destroyers have a 2 hex base, and the light cruisers have a 3 hex base. So the destroyers turn around their front hex, but the light cruisers turn around the center hex. And if we had one of the larger ships, it would be turning around the second of 4 hexes, as you can see here. Turn order for the game is quite simple. There's initiative, then firing torpedoes, then movement, then resolving torpedo hits, then combat, and then finally resolving the end of turn. And if you've played Battletech, some of this will be familiar in that damage that's earned during the combat is applied during the end phase. So anything that's destroyed that round, you can still use. So looking at combat in a subsequent video, let's assume that we've just completed the end phase and it's time to roll initiative again. So for the English, we get a 9, and for the French, we get a 16. Not a great day for the English. So we have to move this vessel. As you remember, we were chuckling before about what might happen. So the Hertfordshire must pass through 2 hexes before it can make a turn. And let's assume that he's all hot and heavy and wants to close the range. Okay, as intelligent or stupid as that may be. But to do so, you would have to move 1, then 2, and then turn around the center hex like this. So not so much of a potential disaster as we might think. If the captain decided to proceed on, right, that was 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, and 6. If they steamed at full speed, the ships could pass through each other. Okay? Not much of a problem. The only place we're going to have trouble is if for whatever reason you decide to just park yourself there. Then we either have to deal with elevation, which is not part of the introductory rules, or stop in place. Okay? So what did we want to do? Well, let's say we wanted to do something like this. 1, 2. Now I'm free to turn. 3, 4, 5, and 6. Okay. Then we do the same over here. Now we have 12 movement points. Okay? So basically, you're going to very soon start feeling like you can run rings around the English. While ships are free to pass through each other in movement, they cannot end their movement with any part of their vessel occupying the same pecs as the other vessel. I mean, you won't be able to put the models together, and there you go. So sometimes alternate movement modes may be required. Now for the little ships, their high speed and low turning requirement should take care of everything you need. But for the bigger ships, of course, you may find it's necessary to side slip. Now, side slipping is a form of movement. It doesn't count towards your turn requirement. It doesn't exactly count as forward movement. We'll take a look at that. Let's take a look at our board, and I'll use side slipping. Side slipping is dependent on a slot on the ship, or a component of the ship, being steering gear. Now, the Pont Briand, this vessel, the Pont Briand does not have steering gear, so it won't be able to side slip. The French ship, the Lave, does have steering gear. Right? Now, there are additional rules about side slipping, but we'll just keep it simple for this. We might do something like this. 1, 2, finish our turn requirement. Then 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10, 11, and hold off. We might advance to 12. It depends on where we think he's going to go. Remember, this video is not about the tactics or the combat. It's just about movement. So the next move would, of course, fall to the English. And again, he has 9 movement points, and you would decide where, and then you'd finish off with the Pelletier. All right? Rinse and repeat, as they say. So the last thing that we should look at for this movement and initiative exploration is the idea of simply turning. So if, for example, you did not want to change location, but you did want to change facing, you can do that in any turn where you have not yet moved by exchanging your movement points for a 1 or 2 hex shift of facing. All right, so let's say the Raven here, which has not yet moved, chooses not to move. He could then, around the front hex, turn 1 or 2 facings in whatever direction floated your boat, in other words. So it could change this way and that way if you like. All right? This sums up this exploratory video of Leviathans from the Casting Shadows blog.